I don't know if I'm cursed or what it is.
Hi Curselings. Today we are talking about this Mad Mama, as I have received a lot of questions and requests for an update about Veronica's situation. So for this video, I'm going to give a rundown of the things we currently know about the state of things in the Mad House. Now, because of the enormous amount of content Veronica has put out since the end of July, I've decided to omit providing receipts for every single bullet point I'll be making, as there is just way too much ground to cover, and it would require a significant amount of time and energy to gather, review, and edit every single reference into this video. It's too much. So this video is going to be audio only. No receipts, no video clips, no screenshots, no pictures, just me. And depending on how I feel later, maybe some smooth jazz to set the mood for our little tete-a-tete. That being said, everything I will be talking about in this video can either be found on the Mad Mama Snarks subreddit, which I'll link below, or in Veronica's content directly. So let's dive in, shall we? Beginning with the housing situation. Last we heard, Veronica had created a GoFundMe to raise the money needed to fix her rotted out roof. She had also informed us that the city had given her 30 days to fix the roof, or they would be condemning her house. And that at the end of August, around the 20th, she was able to get a 30-day extension on that order. That new deadline was September 18th. Now, Veronica did attempt to get a second extension, but was told by the city that she, quote, had 4 years to fix the problem, and that she would have to plead her case to the judge. Unsurprisingly, Veronica was unable to raise the necessary funds to fix her roof before September 18th. The original goal was for $25,000, but she has since reduced it twice, repurposing the GoFundMe to raise funds for housing and moving costs instead. These changes to her GoFundMe, in turn, have led some in her anti-community to wonder if that goes against GoFundMe's terms of service, with some even going as far to report the fundraiser for misuse of funds. It's also unclear if Veronica ever got a proper quote from roofers, with many suspecting that she hadn't bothered to call anyone, let alone book someone to come over and look at her roof or schedule the work. Nor has Veronica talked about setting up a payment plan with roofers to get the work started, or other supports or programs or charities, anything, really, that she could take advantage of to make that work possible. In fact, the only thing we know for sure that Veronica has allegedly done is apply for a financial grant that she still hasn't heard back about. So it appears that she hasn't done anything of substance about her roof or her house, or trying to prevent her house from being condemned. Although it is possible that Veronica's just waiting for her GoFundMe to reach a certain amount before scheduling the roofers. Or something. We don't know for sure. As for the process behind how her house will become officially condemned, Veronica has sporadically talked about it in her content, as well as on threads where she reshared her GoFundMe. Basically, once the deadline to fix the roof has passed, it will then go before a judge who will decide whether or not to condemn the building. This process can take anywhere from weeks to even years before a decision is made, according to the Property Club New York City. However, should the courts decide to condemn Veronica's house, she will be given an evacuation order, which is the time frame she has to vacate the premises. A time frame that can range from 24 hours to 60 days. After the house is condemned, the city will restrict access and may potentially even demolish the building. If it isn't demolished, and I'm unsure what the factors would be that would result in demolition in the first place, the city will put up signs around the property, and no one will be permitted to live on the premises until the building has been brought up to code. In other words, until Veronica is given a court date and steps in front of a judge, she and her family are effectively in limbo. Although, based on how she's been talking about things, it seems like this hearing will be sooner rather than later. Or maybe she's just oblivious to the process. It's hard to know. I have also seen a lot of back and forth on TikTok and Reddit about whether Veronica can sell her property or not, including after the house is officially condemned. And the short answer is yes. Veronica will be able to sell the building as is, meaning that traditional home buyers won't be her target demographic, as lending institutions aren't going to approve of a mortgage for a unlivable property because it's shitty collateral. It's just a bad investment as far as the bank will be concerned. So the sort of buyer Veronica can hope for is an investor who's interested in and financially able to renovate and make the house livable, making it attractive to banks and home buyers, or for a developer who's interested in the land directly to build something else. Something Veronica seems to be somewhat aware of, as on several occasions, mostly in her live streams, she has asked her audience if any of them would be interested in buying a fixer-upper, and that she'd be willing to let the house go for $25,000, which, by the way, is $5,000 more than what she bought it for back in 2020. She has also stated that the house needs a lot of work. Not only does it need a roof, and not just shingles, but the subroof will need to be replaced in certain areas due to water damage and wood rot, but it also needs new windows, as some have been boarded over, not to mention that there's lead paint throughout the entire house, including on the windows and doors. There's also obvious water damage in some rooms, notably in Veronica's bedroom, where the ceiling has literally begun to fall down. I'm guessing because her bedroom is under the part of the roof that is rotten. So I think it's fairly safe to assume that if there's water damage, which we all know there probably is, there's likely also probably black mold in the ceiling and potentially the walls throughout the house, depending on the degree of water penetration that has occurred. Veronica has also said that the kitchen would need to be completely gutted, as well as the bathrooms and laundry room. Then there's the chimney on the outside of the house, which also needs to be torn down, and is one of the urgent things that the city has requested Veronica rectify. That and her house has mice. As for the foundation or anything like that, I have no idea. I haven't been able to find a seller's declaration or an inspection report from previous owners to see what the state of the property was like in 2020 or earlier, mostly just because I'm nosy. But if I had to guess, we're talking about a complete gut here, straight down to the bones of the house with a brand new roof at a minimum. So a significant renovation. As to Veronica's efforts in trying to sell the property, she did say at one point that she was meeting with a realtor. However, we do not know if she actually did meet with a realtor or not, as the house has not been officially listed, at least not yet, or if it will be. That said, I did see many properties in similar condition to Veronica's house in the area that were up for sale, some of which were tagged as pending, meaning that the owner had accepted an offer. So it's definitely not impossible for a realtor to take on her property. It's just likely going to be more challenging and probably slower than Veronica would prefer. As for Veronica's living situation once she is evicted, well, that remains up in the air. Over the last few weeks, Veronica has been casually looking at places, primarily to rent, with varying degrees of success or unsuccess, which is a moderate improvement from August when she was facing down the original deadline, as at that point, Veronica had no plan in place. She had nowhere to go, was incredibly unsure about what would happen to her or her kids, and seemed way too unmotivated to begin solving the problem. So it is nice to see her trying, even if it is half-assed. Yet, despite looking for a place to rent, Veronica has been somewhat resistant to the idea overall, going back and forth between no one will rent to someone with 10 kids and I just need someone to give me a chance. She has also waffled on whether or not she should sell her current house or attempt to fix it up, although she has started to come to terms with the current real estate market in her area, as she recently complained about the prices of houses and the fact that she wouldn't be able to afford another similarly sized house. Not that she would qualify for a mortgage anyway due to poor credit. Veronica has also complained about rental prices in her area, as the property size she would need to house her family isn't exactly a cheap ask. We're talking about a fairly large house. Not to mention the requirements she'd need to meet up front to even secure a lease, primarily the financial ones. That, and there's also a lot of competition for rentals in general, to the point where Veronica has said that she has been outright refused consideration by several prospective landlords due to the size of her family, leading some of her followers to suggest that Veronica not disclose how many children she has. That's definitely a super great idea, right? This, in turn, has resulted in many in her anti-community wondering if Veronica would even be able to rent, given that she lacks a stable income, as her social media revenue is reliant on her posting regularly, something she has been negligent in doing since January, and because she is currently unemployed. One of Veronica's potential solutions to this rental problem is to use the money from the sale of her house to secure several months' rent in advance, which would allow her time to build up her finances, assuming she kept posting. This seems like a fairly dubious strategy that hinges on a lot of external factors outside of her control. In other words, it's wishful thinking. Also, Veronica, realizing that she will be unable to find another house for $25,000, has begun to toy with the idea of keeping the house and fixing it up somehow. This idea presents a new set of problems, as Veronica's not sure if she could afford to rent and fix up her house at the same time. Still, keeping the house and trying to make it livable seems like the best long-term strategy, as she owns the house outright and would only need to pay property taxes to hold on to it, assuming that she pays her property taxes, because those are still in arrears. And if Veronica continues to not pay them, we'll lose the house anyway eventually. So, as for the looming prospect that her house will be condemned eventually and that she will be evicted, Veronica has been seemingly inert in her movement on this front. At best, she has talked about renting a storage unit or possibly even storing stuff at her mother's house, but has yet to start packing or moving things out of the house or pulling a trigger on a rental. She's also talked about selling some of her furniture and other belongings, especially if they can't fit into her eventual apartment or house rental due to size or space issues. But again, she has yet to start sorting through her belongings or engage in downsizing that we know of, let alone begin listing items on like Facebook Marketplace or whatever other things you can sell things in her area. Although, I do suspect that part of this may have to do with waiting until after her surgery to kick that effort off and to avoid trolls messing with her too much, because that's probably going to happen. Veronica has also said that CPS will allow her to live out of a hotel with her kids if she's unable to secure housing before she's evicted from her property, but it's still unclear if they'd return the youngest 4 kids to her care if this were the case. She's also recently spoke about a 5-bedroom apartment that she had applied for at the end of September, but she has yet to confirm whether or not she secured the lease at the time of this recording. Based on what she said about the apartment, though, it sounds like it would only be big enough to support the kids she currently has in her custody and not the 4 still in foster care, as it only has 5 bedrooms. As for Veronica's kids still in foster care and CPS in general, well, that also seems somewhat stagnant due to her precarious living situation, with Veronica saying that CPS can help her with housing if she does become homeless, but until we reach that extreme point, they can't help her. Regarding the lead contamination, Veronica has now confirmed that all 4 of the children in foster care did test positive for lead poisoning, although in a fairly recent live stream, she said that her 7-year-old A might have actually tested negative, but she wasn't sure, she didn't remember. Veronica also confirmed that she has received the birth certificates for both A and her 5-year-old son, D, as obtaining the birth certificates was one of the requirements CPS had for reunification, with the other being the removal of the lead in her house to prevent future lead exposure of her children under the age of 6. It's also been unclear as to why CPS has retained A in foster care, since she was 7 when she entered care and she now has a birth certificate. Veronica also wondered about this on a live stream, concluding that maybe it had something to do with her house being condemned. I also suspect that it might be to prevent disruption of the other 3 children still in care, as removing A might upset the younger children or create unnecessary anxiety or what have you, I don't know. As for the children that are in Veronica's care, they seem to be mostly okay, although Veronica has complained about her teens D&D refusing to go to school and skipping classes. Apparently, in the first week of school, a student actually approached her daughter D and told her that he watches her mother's TikToks in a very bullying way, so no wonder they're not thrilled about going to school. Food security has also been a concern for the Madhouse since July, with Veronica confirming in August that she had not recertified her stamps, meaning that her family went without food stamps for the month of August, although they did receive some through a summer program. Now, I have no idea if she had an opportunity to recertify in September and this is no longer a concern for her family, or if she's just relying on her social media revenue to provide food for her family. I have no idea. As for the CPS home visits, in one of her vlogs, Veronica had the kids meet the social worker outside, telling them that if they all met her outside, that she wouldn't have to go into the house. Which I'm not entirely sure is how that works. Also, why can't she come inside? Veronica routinely says in her content that her house isn't actually that dirty. It's not filthy like people try to say, it just looks bad because she has a lot of kids. So if it isn't that bad, like she says, why couldn't the social worker go inside? That's so weird. As for Veronica and her health, she told her audience around the end of August that her doctor believed that she probably had PTSD from her coma and hospitalization, which isn't really all that surprising, if I'm being completely honest. Then, around mid-September, Veronica admitted that she had started therapy. I believe group therapy, but I could be wrong. And then at the end of September, she posted that she had had a psychological evaluation where she talked about whether there was a normal level of hallucinations. At the beginning of October, so last week, I think maybe on the 3rd, Veronica finally had her hysterectomy, which she has needed for quite a while now, as she had a massive fibroid, which in one of her videos, or maybe it was a live stream, she described as being the size of a grapefruit, and then in another video, the size of a football, which is, yeah, not great. She has since returned home. But while Veronica was still in the hospital and kind of high on Oxy, she did make a TikTok where she concluded that maybe she should be on antidepressants, seemingly and incorrectly assuming that mood stabilizers and anxiety meds would have the same euphoric effects that painkillers have, which they absolutely do not. No, they do not. As for Veronica's post-surgery recovery plans, she admitted before she went to have her hysterectomy that she didn't really have one, and that she expected the kids to essentially fend for themselves, with the older kids expected to help out, because parentified teens are the norm in the Madhouse. For context, the youngest child currently in Veronica's care is 8 or 9 years old, maybe 10 maximum. I don't know the ages of her kids that well. So in other words, it's a shit plan because she has children that still require parenting. Now, once Veronica is recovered, she says that she plans to get a job while continuing to pursue her career as a content creator and a painter, maybe a coloring book artist. She's also talked about selling crochet plushies and other things. She's got a lot of ideas, not a lot of follow through, so we'll see what happens. Now, Veronica did get a part-time job back in August, working at a drugstore or pharmacy, corner store, I'm not actually quite sure, that she says her friend owned, but it was short-lived after she was allegedly fired because she says she didn't know people could pay with their phones and Apple Watches. It's her words though, who knows what actually happened. We also learned that the boyfriend Veronica claimed to have hallucinated while she was in the hospital was actually a real person after all. What a surprise. Specifically that it was the male childhood friend that we thought it was who had gone with her to the hospital in Oswego, apparently I've been pronouncing it incorrectly, and it seems they have had a falling out after he didn't invite her to a party in September for some reason. Veronica made a post on Threads being upset about not being invited, and then he responded by making a passive-aggressive Instagram post using a photo of him and her while they were children, where he basically said he felt like she was just using him the entire time and wasn't actually interested in having a genuine connection. Keep in mind, these are people in their late 30s, they're both 39, 40-ish, so the fuck. So, of course, it would be completely unsurprising that Veronica's response to that Instagram post was to go to her TikTok and post the text messages he had sent her while she was in a coma, followed by a screenshot of the Instagram post that she made no effort to censor his username in, and then throw a tantrum about how she loved him and how he was apparently throwing her trauma in her face or something, and I don't, it's very juvenile. And frankly, I'm on his side because it really does sound like he was like, whoa, no. Good on you, dude. Whatever the case, though, I'm assuming there was a back and forth between them behind the scenes because he would quickly private his social media, and Veronica pulled the video down within an hour of posting it. Of course, not before a bunch of people saw it and saved it, like yours truly. Confirming what we already knew, which was that Veronica probably was with him when she OD'd on Tylenol, and that she's lying about that weekend. As for her overdose on Tylenol, Veronica continues to maintain that she doesn't remember the 2 days before her coma, which she spent in the hospital in Oswego, with the number of days before her coma changing to conveniently include the weekend now, when she was seemingly taking the Tylenol. She's also saying now that the bottle of Tylenol wasn't even that big, and that she didn't even take that much, really. She's just super sensitive to acetaminophen because of her kidneys and excuses. Which is interesting, because back in June, she gave a slightly different story, in that she said that she had been taking something like 800 or 900 milligrams every 4 hours over the course of several days, with a few extra for good measure. All the receipts to that are in one of my previous videos. She said it, she's now trying to rewrite history. We also got some insight as to why her dentist didn't prescribe her any painkillers, a major sticking point, because if she was in so much pain where she was taking Tylenol to the point where she overdosed, presumably the dentist should have prescribed painkillers, right? Like, why didn't he? What happened there? Well, it turns out he did. He did prescribe her painkillers, but she just didn't know. She left before they could give her the prescription, probably drove herself home, and for whatever reason, didn't call the dentist back about a prescription for the pain, relying instead on a mystery bottle of, finger quotes, Tylenol. Whatever you say, Ronnie. Finally, Veronica has been leaning rather heavily into the whole us versus them rhetoric. That old chestnut, telling her audience that her haters are actively trying to ruin her life by telling lies about her, twisting the truth, harassing her, threatening her, and that this is all so that they can harm her family. Now, while I don't doubt that there is a very, very tiny, small subset of her anti-community that is trying to do that, and we do not claim them over here, all of yes, can get fucked. I also think that it is a smooth-brained move to try and distill what her viewers might think of her and the things that they have seen in her content, things that she has posted to this internet, into simplistic binaries. Especially when anyone who even questions her logic, her behavior, her lies, inconsistent stories, visible child neglect, and so on, are attacked by her die-hard followers who are, something's wrong with some of them, and then called haters, trolls, and are accused of trying to harm her. Criticizing or questioning what you are seeing, that you are consuming, is not allowed, for whatever reason. Okay? Having an opinion about what you're doing, having a reaction to the things you are posting onto the internet is not people trying to harm you. So Veronica, you can fuck all the way off with that bullshit. No one made you buy that house. No one made you allow your abuser to have access to your children after you found out about the child SA. No one made you take the fucking Tylenol or have 12 kids or run around dating a bunch of men or refuse to get mental health support until you were 30 fucking 9. Most people, including me, as snarky as these videos may come across, actually want to see you get your shit together and be a fucking cycle breaker, because your kids deserve better and so do you. Whether you will see that or not isn't out of my fucking control. I'm just here to talk about things I watch, and you, for some reason, are one of the things I watch. Anyway, I am certain there are things that I have missed or I have forgotten, but yeah, it's a mess. The whole thing is just a fucking shit show. Anyway, that's it. We're ending the video now. I want to thank everyone for liking, commenting, and subscribing, with a big thank you to my mods and members as always. You guys are rad. You're the bee's freaking knees, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye!